This episode of Falmouth in Focus is brought to you by the following corporate underwriter.
John's Liquors, 729 Main Street, Falmouth, 508-548-2287.
This time on Falmouth in Focus, a river renaissance, where the fish swim again and native plants bloom into an explosion of color and diversity. It's nature at work, with plenty of help from a broad coalition of state and local team players. But now, after more than a decade of diligence and so close to the finish line, questions over federal funding may delay the final chapter of the project. We're diving deep into the Coonamessett River Restoration, and it starts right now. Welcome to Falmouth in Focus. I'm Michael Kasparian.
And I'm Eileen Preston. This is our new format where we devote the second of our 2 monthly shows to a single topic. The Coonamessett River Restoration is a sweeping effort to take a big leap forward by looking backward in ecological time. It's about returning a Falmouth River and its banks to a pre-colonial moment in history. Before there were mills, before there were cranberry bogs, a time when indigenous Wampanoag lived in harmony with the cycles of nature.
The story is unfolded in the background of our busy lives for some 14 years now, and we're going to take a close look at it. It's been an orchestra of grant writers, policymakers, biologists, and heavy equipment operators. We're getting very close to what the team first envisioned all those years ago. A thriving ecosystem with long walkways for locals to enjoy and teaching spaces to help young students understand how living things partner with and feed upon each other.
But Michael, as you mentioned at the top, some funding issues originating in Washington, D.C. have muddled the waters. We'll get to that, but let's start at the beginning. FCTV has documented the progress of this project from early on. So much of those efforts were led by a community videographer, Allison Leshin, one of those superheroes who doesn't wear a cape. She completed her FCTV video training just as the Coonamessett River Restoration was getting underway, and she took the lead on several documentaries about the project. Here now is a selection of her work.
So I started documenting the Coonamessett River Restoration in, I think it was 2015, largely because I had some friends who were involved in the Coonamessett River Trust, which was the nonprofit organization in town that was really the driver behind this whole thing happening. There have been many, many partners since, but they were really the ones that got it going. So the first video I did was the one about herring tagging, kind of right out of the gate after taking the Intro to Field course at FCTV. I think that was kind of my first video.
This box holds the computer that registers the tags. So when the fish swim underneath one of our antennas, it pings the computer that's inside this box.
Herring were incredibly significant to, first of all, to the Wampanoags, the local Native American tribe, dating back, millennia, as both a source of food and ceremonial purposes. Then when the settlers came along, it was also a very important source of food, income, etc.
As a child, of course, the big thing to this area was the herring in the spring. It's hard to think of how prolific the fish were. You couldn't see the bottom of the catch basin over there. The runs would just be so thick. I realize now, at that time, if you told me that those fish are going to become almost extinct, I'd say, are you crazy?
So what happened to this fish run through the centuries? From the 1700s on, it was dammed up as an industrial river, first for grist mills, later on the woolen mill. These are blockages for the river. After the mill industry moved elsewhere, this area in the late 1800s was turned into cranberry bogs. And one of the things about growing cranberries that was discovered here on the Cape is that cranberries grow better when you keep sanding the bog platforms. Sand moves into the river bottom, makes the river bottom wide, and from the point of view of a fish trying to get upriver, you're easily spotted by predators from above. It also makes it shallow with no shade on the side, and it increases the temperature of the river.
But it's also not just about the herring, it's also about the American eel that live in this system, the eastern brook trout in the headwaters that we hope to see expand to the lower river, and then the food web that relies on all of those species. They grow up out in the ocean, and then they come swimming up the rivers and give birth to their young in the freshwater. And so both food webs rely on those river herring, the ocean food web and the freshwater aquatic food web. And so the Coonamessett River project, by removing the various blockages in the system, will essentially open up that link between the ocean and the freshwater.
The shot of all of the project partners is incredibly impressive. It's federal, state, local, nonprofit, for-profit who donated time and effort, the company that actually did the physical work of the restoration, many, many people who volunteered untold hours of time, as well as agencies of all different levels that offered funding to make it happen, and including the town itself.
And that is such a Falmouth thing. We get things done when people from across the community come together and work towards a common goal.
And this spring we hosted 6 elementary classrooms, totaling over 400 students who come to experience the river in person. Working with the students has just been a wonderful way to expose the next generation to the value of nature and also to learn to cherish places like this.
One of the really exciting aspects of this project to me is the educational aspect and the way that it's being used in the Falmouth schools. All of the 4th and 5th graders in the Falmouth schools go to the river each year as a field trip to learn various things, to do experiments, etc. So part of what we did was create videos that would assist them in that process.
So, how do we know if what was done to the Coonamessett River worked? How can we tell if a river is healthy? That's the mystery you are going to solve today on your visit. You will be a river detective answering a scientific question.
Basically, we can observe and test a watershed's health in 3 different ways, looking at physical characteristics, chemical characteristics, and biological characteristics.
I really enjoyed doing all of these videos and sort of following this project along with all these amazing people involved, and I feel like I shouldn't even be the one really speaking to the project itself, because I was just documenting it. But it was really fun for me to kind of be the fly on the wall, with the camera, documenting the whole process.
Great work by Allison Lesher there.
She is. She's fantastic. And so are the other shooters and the drone operators that she had help her. And actually, this is a good moment to put in a little plug for FCTV.
Oh, yeah.
And to encourage viewers to come in and talk to us about membership. FCTV's free classes can equip you to tell this community's stories. And then you can produce material as valuable as what you just saw.
An amazing resource indeed. So a lot of this river project revolves around its coordinator, Dr. Betsy Gladfelter, who we saw there. And I understand that you got the opportunity to walk the grounds of the project with Betsy?
I really did.
Just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Let's call it a brisk.
I'll bet.
It was a brisk walk in the New England winter weather. And Betsy talked me through how the final phases of the restoration are playing out. Let's take a look at that now.
One of the big challenges here, as opposed to the lower river, this has been left fallow for so long that there are lots of invasives. And you have to make sure, you don't want to restore it and have the invasives come right back.
So there are cranberries here, right? Am I seeing cranberries? What am I looking at here?
No, you're not seeing cranberries here. But yes, there are cranberries.
How do you keep the cranberries from not coming back again? Is it because the sand will be gone?
No, there will be cranberries.
Okay.
Cranberries are native. I mean, although what was here was a variety, right, for growing. But they're native wetland plants. So we don't mind cranberries here.
And they won't override everything else?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. What about fish? How are the fish doing?
So this restoration, the Lower River Restoration, was finished in 2020. That's only 5 years. And it would take a while to build up a population too. However, there's a big success story with the trout.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
And the trees, you'll have to pull up all the trees, half the trees?
A lot of these trees, a lot of that forest will stay.
It will, okay. Yeah. The birds will be happy. In scope of projects, is it the biggest on the Cape as far as coastal restoration that you know of, or?
It's the first on the Cape.
Is it? Okay,
yeah.
well, good for
you.
you.
It's certainly not the biggest. This is the third in the state.
Okay.
The first was Eel River. The second was Tidmarsh, and Tidmarsh is the biggest. I think it's one of the biggest wetland restorations on the East Coast, or certainly in the New England area.
Okay. What was your biggest obstacle? I'm sure there's dams that are obstacles, but I mean, was the biggest obstacle funding or time?
Oh, well, that's interesting. So for the lower river, we started out, every other year we got little grants. And so 2011, 2013, 2015, we had grants somewhere in the $50,000 to $60,000 range that were sort of planning grants. But then, once you show you can do what you said you were going to do with the money, then you apply for big federal grants. And so we got a big NOAA grant who came back to us and said, well, we'd like to give you more money if you're going to go further upriver.
Help our fish.
Yeah. So we did, and that gave us money to do the planning. But then it was a little bit of, I had to write a lot of grants.
Yeah.
And there was some anxious moments, but we needed some more money, and a new program came on, a new state program called the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Act, and they gave us our final $700,000.
Wow, that's a big chunk of money. Yeah. It's truly, a real impact to your town and to the natural environment. I mean, it's huge.
Yes,
Yeah, it's really huge.
Oh, I mean, how can you help but be, just honored to be able to be part of this? You're going to be amazed.
I'm not going
when
to
you come
recognize
next
this
summer.
place. Yeah. Next summer, it will be different.
Between here and where that boat that has to be removed is, this will be all a wetland walkway. So a key partner in this whole restoration has been the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe.
Oh.
And they, of course, have been stewards of this land for thousands of years. And two key aspects. One is they recognize that we're part of nature, which a lot of more modern people have forgotten.
I'm really aware of, yeah.
Right.
And they even named this river after the natural habitat, right? Yeah. How long are the eels here?
Well, the eels can get this big.
Here?
Yeah.
Do they sometimes get that long?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
But,
I think that's great.
Well,
how often, Betsy, do you have to go out with Concom and do all the site visits?
Go every week.
You go every week?
Yeah.
So how many hours would you say that is of your?
I figure you spend, between that and the meeting and reading the stuff that's sent to us, probably 6 to 8 hours.
6 to 8 hours a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. And it feels so quiet here, You're really peaceful.
Yeah, it's a different setting than the lower river. And like I say, it's because it's a much smaller river here.
Yeah.
But it's the gateway to where the fish reproduce.
What I'll call pampas grass, is that gonna stay or be gone, or is
Yeah, that's a native grass.
That is a native.
But I don't know what it's not called pampas grass.
No, we called it that in California.
Might be like a switchgrass or something.
Which fish here are you most excited about coming back? Is it the herring? Is it the trout? Is it the eel?
I like the trout story because this used to be a famous trout stream. People would come from Boston to New York to here for a trout vacation to get salter trout.
And when was that? 1900s?
1900.
Okay.
Right around 1900.
Okay.
Around the turn of that century.
Yeah. Where all those beautiful homes were built here in Falmouth. People would come down here and fish.
Yep.
And you think that could happen again?
Yeah. In fact, I suspect this 14-inch trout worked his way at least into Great Pond to get more and bigger food.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Eileen, watching that, I feel an appreciation for the nice, warm studio we're standing in right now.
Indoors is a great thing during these months. And it was indoors, just a few days after that walk, that a whole bunch of the key players gathered to celebrate the restoration project. FCTV was there in the Herman Room at the Public Library.
This project really serves as a model for other restoration efforts around the state and has really taught us as a division how to approach restoration.
Having a resource like this, where commercial people can benefit from it, where people can recreate there, where young people can learn, as so many of the Wampanoag people learn generation to generation how nature is there and how it heals itself, and how people can enjoy this, and including people that have physical challenges. This is all in place right in this beautiful area here. And as we do it, we're helping all the other surrounding areas at the same time. This is really exciting.
Also taking in mind our own coastal resilience and what sea level rise and increased storms are going to mean for our infrastructure, our homes, our environment. And projects like this are a shining example of what we can do when we act together, and what state and feds and local can support to make sure our coastlines are resilient. Because it's only going to get worse: flooding, sea level rise, storms, and our first line of defense should and needs to be nature-based solutions, so that when the water comes up, they go through rivers and bogs and not into your basement, not into our businesses.
And today I want to call out 3 amazing women. Betsy, amazing. When we sit there and we crunch numbers to collateralize projects, and folks like Beth Lambert go out there and make those dollars work, and work in synergy with the community, that's an amazing thing. There's another amazing woman who has a statue down in Woods Hole, Rachel Carlson. Everybody knows Rachel Carlson from Silent Spring. Not many people have ever read Under the Sea Wind. Written, moreover, out of the deep conviction that the life of the sea is worth knowing. To stand at the edge of the sea and to sense the ebb and flow of the tides, to feel the breath of a mist moving over a great salt marsh, to watch the flight of shorebirds that have swept up and down the surf lines of continents for untold thousands of years, and to see the running of the old eels and the young shad to the sea, is to have knowledge of things that are as nearly eternal as the earthly life can be. These things were before ever man stood on the shore of the ocean and looked out upon it with wonder, and they continue year in and year out through the centuries and the ages, while man's kingdoms rise and fall.
So, Michael, the mood in the Herman Room that day was one of real completion. People were really happy with themselves.
Absolutely.
A job well done. But, as we mentioned, a serious speed bump has developed, originating in Washington, D.C., since the inauguration of the new administration. President Trump issued an executive order last month, slamming the brakes on a wide spectrum of congressionally appropriated federal funding. It's lurching projects to a halt across the country and around the world, and here. The Coonamessett River Restoration is no exception. I spoke to Dr. Gladfelter today, the morning that we record this, and I want to share the exact wording of a statement she gave me. We have 2 federal grants for Upper Coonamessett Restoration Project, one from NOAA through Mass Audubon, and the other through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, or USFWS. The NOAA funds are now accessible. Our immediate goal is to construct the river channel by the end of March, and we have access to sufficient funding to do that. As of last Friday, meaning February 14th, the USFWS funding is still blocked. We will need that funding to continue work in April.
So I'm sure Dr. Gladfelter is deeply touched by this, and those words that she spoke, she's going to be a little bit troubled, but I think that she'll find there is encouragement here in this town that we live in.
Yeah, there's certainly the will and the way, and there's so much hard work, a decade or more of hard work. So, yeah, let's hope she pulls it out.
And I think the important thing here to remember is that federal funding has been halted for review. So there's still an opportunity that that funding will come through. So let's remain hopeful, and if it doesn't, I'll bet you we'll be able to rally people to get together and make sure that this project gets to the finish line.
Oh, your words, God's ears, yeah. That's going to wrap up this deep dive edition of Falmouth in Focus.
We'll be back again soon with our usual monthly roundup of things FCTV members are doing in the community. I'm Michael Kasparian.
I'm Eileen Preston.
Until next time,
We'll see you around town.